It's been over a month since the news first broke about Justin Trudeau's $900 million scandal. Every day, new details emerge that paint a concerning picture of corruption at the highest levels of government. The close ties between Justin Trudeau, the Liberal Party, and the We organization goes back years. We know that after Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister, We started paying members of his family. Over the last 5 years, those payments have totaled more than $500,000. We know that Justin Trudeau's government has rewarded the We organization with multiple sole source contracts over the past 5 years, well before they ever dreamt up the Canada Student Service Grant. In fact, Justin Trudeau, since becoming Prime Minister, has increased government funding to We by a factor of 10, a tenfold increase. We also know that this wasn't the only pandemic program that was designed to benefit Liberal insiders. Just last week, we learned that the Liberals handed the multi-million-dollar rental assistance program to a Crown corporation that had no ability to deliver it, allowing the program to then be subcontracted to a company with close ties to the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff. So Conservatives are calling for the Finance Committee to investigate who made this decision to outsource the program. And we have written to the Lobbying Commissioner, since neither MCAP, the organization that ultimately got the subcontract for the rental assistance program, nor Ms. Telford's husband, a senior vice president at MCAP, are registered to lobby the government. This raises serious questions about all of the government's pandemic spending. We know that billions of dollars of taxpayers' money were handed out in a very short time frame. So how many other Liberal insiders got sweetheart deals? As a result, the Ethics Commissioner is investigating. Multiple parliamentary committees are investigating, and Conservatives have written to the RCMP requesting a criminal investigation. The rental assistance program is so flawed that only a handful of businesses have been able to access it. Meanwhile, thousands of Canadian businesses who desperately need help have been left to fend for themselves. So who gets held accountable for Justin Trudeau's failures and never-ending scandals? We know that the Prime Minister isn't going to take responsibility. He never does. No member of Cabinet or the Prime Minister's inner circle has been fired. In fact, the Liberals seem to be desperately trying to pretend that there's nothing to see here. But no one is buying Justin Trudeau's latest excuses. So it's clear that the Liberals are going to try to invent some kind of a policy excuse if they do make a change. Justin Trudeau is going to try to invent some kind of a conflict. We all know, though, that it's not only Mr. Morneau's scandalous ethics problems, but also the Prime Minister's himself. And it really doesn't matter making a trade for Bill Morneau when you've got a Prime Minister that has such a lack of ethics, embroiled in so many scandals, and just focused on growing the government at the expense of the free market, growing the size of government, increasing the way that government interferes and intervenes in the economy and in people's daily lives. A tax and borrow and spend policy really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter who's sitting in the chair if those are the policies that are being implemented. It doesn't matter how much credibility you might have in your previous life, how many letters you have under your name. If you are going to be part of Justin Trudeau's government, expanding the state and making life less affordable, leaving less money in the pockets of Canadians, that is always a recipe for disaster. Bigger governments, higher taxes, bigger deficits have never created more prosperity. Low taxes, free people making free choices, buying and selling goods and services freely, that is what creates prosperity. And so whether they trade Bill Morneau for somebody else, it really doesn't matter as long as Justin Trudeau's Prime Minister. So today we're looking forward to the testimony from several ministers and officials. And as we've seen in the past, we're able to highlight contradictions in their stories. We're able to obtain some of the truth, but we can still point out where there are massive holes in their story, as we saw with Justin Trudeau, who said that he pushed back on his officials on May 8th, told them to do a review to make sure, but we organizations were already told that they could start spending money on May 5th. So that's a massive hole in his story. And we're in an unprecedented situation, not only with the pandemic and the economic consequences of the pandemic, but also in Justin Trudeau's handling of the government. And now we know why. Remember, his very first bill, the very first law that he introduced into Parliament during the pandemic, attempted to completely sideline the role of the opposition parties. He attempted to write himself massive powers without any supervision, without any oversight and accountability. Now we know why. Because he was trying not to get caught. He knew what he was going to be using the pandemic for, and he was trying to take steps to make sure that he wouldn't be subject to this kind of scrutiny and accountability. But Conservatives were able to fight back, were able to prevent much of what he was trying to do, and thank goodness we did, because now we have the facts around this sordid affair. So we're going to continue to use the committee meetings in the next few days and weeks to try to obtain more of the truth so that Canadians can see the type of government Justin Trudeau is leading.